My name is Denise Scales, and I am a descendant of Dewitty, Nebraska. Thank you for your time today. Welcome, welcome. The descendants of Dewitty began by telling the untold story of African American homesteaders in Nebraska. We discovered it was bigger than Nebraska and spanned the entire country. It's the microcosm of the Black experience. We relaunched our website in February of 2022, descendantsofdewittynebraska.org, multimedia experience created by Ian McKell, and it is the wealth of information. Please log into our website and our Facebook page and leave us a message. Hit the like button and share it with your friends and family. Our panelist today is Delbert Dewitty, and the topic today is the American legacy. Mr. Dewitty, tell us about the American legacy.
Thank you. Our podcasts have been showing how Dewitty, Nebraska contributed to the American legacy. During our last presentation, Joyce Ann Gray discussed the Walker family, one of 188 families residing in Dewitty. Today, we will move to a macro view. First, the 400 Years of African American History Commission addresses African American contributions since 1619. Descendants of Dewitty is part of that organization. One of their subcommittees focuses on Black towns, including Dewitty, Nebraska. This is the website for the 400 Years of African American Commission. If you review that, you'll notice that it says it commences with Point Comfort, Virginia in 1619. Make a note of that date. It will be referenced again later in our presentation today. Next, a subcommittee of that organization is called Black Towns. And this is their site, Smogo TV. There's their logo. Notice the title, 400 Years of African American History Commission. It's an official channel. If you go to that site and click on Revitalizing America's Historic All Black Towns, there'll be multiple presentations. Episode 1 is there. If you click on episode 2, you'll get a chance to review the discussion that includes Dewitty, Nebraska. Get a lot of help from Google. We will discuss African American historical events over 2,000 years and their impact on American culture. Dewitty, Nebraska, and its unique relationship with Brownlee, Nebraska, is American legacy. During our research, we found local, national, and international connections. We discussed so many 6 degrees of separation that we stopped using the word coincidence. My name is Delbert Overton Dewitty, and some of you realize that there is both a Dewitty and Overton, Nebraska. Here I'm holding a picture of Miles Dewitty's post office and community store in Dewitty, Nebraska. For those of you who don't know, Miles Dewitty was the first postmaster, and the community was named for him. Miles Dewitty's grandparents, Peter and Harriet Dewitty, were born in Barbados, West Indies. Their son, Moses Dewitty, 1842 to 1910, and his wife, Rebecca Fields Dewitty, 1847 to 1900, moved to Garfield, Texas, just outside of Austin, where Miles was born in 1874. The other picture is Bryson Dewitty. He was born in 1866. He is my great-grandfather and Miles's brother. These are documents from the Cherry County Historical Society Museum in Valentine, Nebraska, of the Sandhills. You can't see them well, but the first documents the school system, mentioning Miles Dewitty as one teacher and William Meehan as the only white teacher. The other document is Federal Post Office file indicating when Miles Dewitty registered the Dewitty Post Office. Let's switch to the Overton side. This
Delbert,
is a news.
Could I ask a question at this point?
Absolutely.
You said that William Meehan was listed as a white teacher.
Yes.
Well, he of course had a black mother. His
Correct.
mother was Rosetta Meehan, right?
Right.
So that's interesting that he was listed as a white teacher. I think he lived his life as a black man. Anyway, I thought I'd just comment on that. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. This is a newspaper article about my cousin, Roscoe Overton, and his quest to find our Overton lineage in Nashville, Tennessee. This was possible because the Travelers Rest Plantation is a National Historical Site. Emmeline Overton, our matriarch, was born a slave on the Travelers Rest Plantation in 1825. The land that was purchased by Judge John Overton in 1796 and named Travelers Rest was a Native American village for centuries before then. Our family's connection with Travelers Rest and a number of major American historical events is nothing short of miraculous. If you attempted to identify the two most significant events during the early years of America's legacy, you would probably come up with the Revolutionary War of 1776 and the Civil War of 1865. How America developed between those two events was significantly impacted by Judge John Overton and Andrew Jackson. I've actually got a link to the Travelers Rest site. For those of you interested in that, it has quite a bit of American history. It's just a little video. I'll give you this short snippet so you can get a feel.
Welcome to Historic Travelers Rest, dedicated to preserving and interpreting the Overton home, while serving as a gateway for learners of all ages to explore and experience Nashville's historic past. One of only a few federal period homes in Tennessee open to the public. Travelers Rest hosts visitors from around the world, and thousands of school children and adults visit annually, walking the grounds, listening to stories, and learning nearly 1,000 years of Tennessee history.
Judge John Overton, April 9th, 1766 till April 12th, 1833, was an American planter, advisor of Andrew Jackson, a judge of the Superior Court of Tennessee, a banker and political leader. Colonel John Overton, son of Judge Overton, and just as Thomas Jefferson did, fathered children with his slave Emmeline. The comment earlier referring to Meehan and his white ancestry and lived as a Black man, we're going to hit that topic again later on in this presentation. That is a big part of American legacy, those integrations and passing and colors. We're going to address that in a little bit more detail. Since it's already come up, it is actually in our presentation later on. This is a reference document describing the close relationship between Judge Overton and Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson was notorious and engaged in multiple duels. This picture depicts a duel in which Thomas Overton, Judge Overton's brother, was his second, in which Andrew Jackson killed his opponent. Andrew Jackson, March 15, 1767 to June 11, 1845, was an American lawyer, general, and statesman who served as the 7th President of the United States from 1829 to 1837. Before being elected to the presidency, Jackson gained fame as a general in the United States Army and served in both houses of the U.S. Congress. During his lifetime, Jackson went from poverty to wealth because he personally embraced the institution of slavery. The Patriots' War, the War of 1812, the Creek War, and the Seminole War were all closely interrelated conflicts revolving around Indian removal and slavery, and Andrew Jackson had his fingerprints on all of them. The fighting in the U.S. Southeast during the second decade of the 19th century defined manifest destiny, which was underlined by a disposition to expand slavery and white supremacy. Manifest destiny was the self-declared right of the United States to violate national sovereignty to eliminate any perceived threat of an encroaching foreign colonial power in its vicinity. This policy also intended to seize Spanish colonial possessions and annex them in order so the South could procure additional slave states. Indian removal and slavery were combined with manifest destiny in the War of 1812, as British agents utilized disaffected Native Americans and fugitive slaves to form a Southern front against the United States. The wars in the southeastern United States were all characterized by the same predisposition of U.S. expansionism, which itself was characterized by attempts to expand and protect slavery. The reigning U.S. doctrines of the early 19th century came about in opposition to the threat that slave and native sanctuaries like Florida posed to the southern states. As the policies of Indian removal and manifest destiny became more defined in the southern theater of war, the free Black and native settlements found themselves in constant conflict with the slave-raiding, land-grabbing white settlers of Georgia. The picture on the left identifies the, quote, Negro Fort, end of quote, in Florida. General Andrew Jackson attacked it in 1816, and Spain signed a treaty turning Florida over to America in 1819. He was rewarded for his efforts by being elected President of the United States in 1829. The picture on the right is John Horse, an African Seminole who led them during the Second Seminole War from 1835 to 1842. This coincided with the Trail of Tears, 1830 to 1850, which was one of Andrew Jackson's primary initiatives during his presidential administration. When John Horse surrendered, he agreed to move from Florida to Oklahoma, but after broken promises, ended up in Mexico as an officer in the Mexican Army. I don't have a picture of him, but Cow Tom, an African Creek leader who migrated from Alabama to Oklahoma. The military writer Ethan Allen Hitchcock kept a diary in 1842 and wrote about his experiences in Native American territory. He mentioned Cow Tom often in the diary, noting how the Negro always spoke, quote Negro, that's a quote from him, always spoke for the chief who knew no English. Tom eventually earned money and was able to purchase his own freedom from the chief and that of his own family. As a free man, he thus began to receive payments for his services as an interpreter, earning more money than the highest paid blacksmith. He acquired land and livestock of his own. After the Civil War battle in Honey Springs, Oklahoma, Cow Tom moved his family to Fort Gibson, where he became chief of the Muskogee Nation. Cow Tom retired eventually to the farm life and family life and to his cattle business. He became the patriarch and ancestor of the Simmons Oil family of Oklahoma. The oil magnate Jake Simmons is the grandson of Cow Tom. The legacy of this powerful African Creek leader carried on through his descendants. The tenacity, intelligence, of insight of them, and the fastidiousness that many African in Oklahoma have developed have emerged from the spirit of Cow Tom that inspired many African Creek, African Cherokee, African Seminole, and African Choctaws to succeed. Their impact influenced Black Wall Street in Tulsa and the development of approximately 100 all-Black towns in Oklahoma after emancipation. Both of these African Native American leaders were held negotiations with African presidents. There's a site if you want more information on the Negro Fort. It's called the Negro Fort Massacre, referring to the attack engaged by Andrew Jackson. This is a traveler's rest site. Okay, we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail, but there's a Civil War battle there. They've also got a picture down here of Cow Tom. If you want more information, you can go to these sites. Six degrees of separation. This slide is a picture of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity house at the University of Oklahoma. The fraternity was the first African-American fraternity established in America in 1906 at Cornell University. Excuse me. I was initiated in 1969 at the University of Oklahoma. One of my fraternity brothers there was Jake Simmons Jr., the great-grandson of Cowtown. Before we go on, we should probably go back. To be fair, the conflict between English American settlers and Spanish settlers began long before Andrew Jackson. Spain settled the first European territory in the New World, creating St. Augustine, Florida in 1565, with free Africans in their party. The first English settlement was in Jamestown, Virginia in 1607, and the Pilgrims of the popular Plymouth settlement did not occur till 1620. Once slavery became cemented in the English colonies, Spanish Florida immediately became a sanctuary for escaped slaves and Native Americans. Florida was a functioning slave sanctuary for over 200 years. That's a fact I had never known until this research. Long before the Underground Railroad. If you trace African influence just prior to over 200 years, long before the Underground Railroad, you'll notice that American exploration, you will note that African Moors ruled Spain from 711 until 1492. This is the link to St. Augustine, and this title pretty much says it all. St. Augustine, the birthplace of African American history. If you refer to that site and explore, you'll see some of the things I mentioned about Pedro founding St. Augustine in 1565. Not only were Black members of his crew, but he noted that his arrival had been preceded by free Africans in the French settlement in Fort Carolina, just a few miles north. Again, this is significantly earlier than the 1600s when slaves came to the English colonies.
Delbert,
Yes.
I think we're going to stop here and then we'll leave the last 5 minutes for questions.
All
So,
right.
yes, so go ahead. Who has the
Okay.
question?
Why don't you let people know that we're going to continue it at our next session in 2 weeks. So are there any questions on what we've talked about so far?
Joan, turn your mic on.
Right, I just did. Oh,
Okay.
Delbert, there's so much information. My head is swelling. This is wonderful presentation. Thank you. And thank you for everyone who organized it too. I know the people in the room are involved with this. Would you mind stating, I have 100 questions, but I'm only going to ask one right now. Could you repeat when you said toward the end that the Moors were involved in slavery? I think you said that when you were talking about the Spanish and then the English.
Yes, because
Yes.
we're probably go into more detail on that at the next presentation. But
Okay.
the point we're trying to make is that Spanish explorers actually got to the country before the English explorers.
Right.
And the Spanish explorers went to Florida and they founded St. Augustine. And the tie-in to the Moors is that the Moors ruled Spain from
Right.
711 to 1492.
11 to 1492. Oh.
And in 1492 is when the rulers of Spain actually financed Christopher Columbus's voyage.
Right.
Now,
Right.
Christopher Columbus was Italian. That's why all these semantics are important, right? And the Spaniards financed his exploration, and there were actually Spaniards on his tour in 1492. But they came
Right.
back themselves in the 1500s and went to St. Augustine, Florida. And then,
Right.
and then the English came after that in the 1600s and went to Virginia.
Right. Got it. Wonderful.
So all those are significant. And the point is, that's how you tie in Africans to America long before slavery.
Yes.
And
Yes.
most people just don't know that.
Don't know. So I know you must be familiar with, oh my God, I'm having a moment. The book, They Came Before Columbus.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
All
that's-
right. Yes. I studied with him at Howard.
Yes.
Fascinating. But I was
That's
too
another
young to
tie-in.
appreciate it
Right.
in
Yeah,
great
that's another
detail.
time. Yes, that's another
That's
time.
another time. Thank you. I'll
Yes.
stop. Thank
That's
you
okay.
so much.
Go ahead.
No, come on.
Are there any other questions?
So before we end, can you tie Dewitty to Emmeline for us
Okay.
one time?
Okay. Right. So I'm actually going to do that in the next presentation, but I'll do it now too. So
In
my
one
name-
minute.
and one, okay. My name's Delbert Overton Dewitty, and one of one of Emmeline's relatives actually married a Dewitty. So my grandfather is a Dewitty, and my grandmother is an Overton. So that's how you got the Emmeline, the Overton strand, tied into Dewitty, Nebraska, as a descendant. Yes, sir.
One other link to Dewitty, which I'm sure you're going to cover in your next episode. So I'm your advance man for that.
Good. I appreciate it.
Yeah, was that the big debate in the 1850s between Lincoln and Douglas and the North and the South, basically, was whether what you said about extending slavery into the West would happen. So there'd be more land for slaveholders to take their slaves into. The alternative to that was homesteading. So the folks who got to Dewitty to homestead really came out of, got that opportunity out of the triumph of the North in defeating the slave holders' attempt to extend slavery into the West. But I'm sure we'll hear more about that next time.
Bring that up. I'm glad you brought that up, Richard. Obviously, I'm covering 2,000 years, so there's certain items that I will not touch on. So I'm glad you added that one. Thank you.
Well, it's a great presentation, and I look forward to seeing it in print at some point as well. Yes? Are you thinking about that?
Well, it's a good point. I hadn't gotten that far yet, but
Okay.
yes. All right, Madam President, I know we're running over your schedule, so.
Yes, so we're down to the last minute, so I'm going to go ahead and thank everyone for sharing their time with the descendants of Dewitty. Our next podcast will be Saturday, October the 29th at 12:30, and Mr. Dewitty will finish part 2 of the American Legacy, and we may need to have a part 3, so we'll see. So thank you for your time today, and we'll see you Saturday, October the 29th at 12:30 Central Standard Time. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Mhm.